What's going on, guys? This is Ashlee. Keyton, how art thou? Reporting for duty. It's from the good gentleman David John Wellman. So let's see these questions. I'm very interested, and I haven't looked at them yet, so this will be new for both of us. Let's begin.
1. Why is there something rather than nothing? When I say something, I include God. You believe that everything other than God exists because God created it. But why does God exist rather than not exist?
In terms of being the most logical with a God, that is not going to happen. It is illogical to believe in a God, right? Because God created the rules for logic, so he doesn't abide by them. It'd be like Sims. They can't speak English. The person who made the game The Sims, you could call them God, and the Sims are that's the world that they created. So they don't abide by the same rules. They might look up and say there's a such language as English. And they say, wait a minute.
Kar, Kanu, Daz, Siba, Gork, Dustai,
Army Batar, Glory,
Shaka Fimi Dune, Brib, Fitzel, Kubabaru,
Laka, Dag, Bipso, Argabooni, Dutsim.
You know, that's what they're going to say. All to communicate the subtitles. There's no such thing as English, because this is a world that God constructed. So we abide by the logic that God constructs, but that does not force him to have to abide by that logic. Believing in nothing does not benefit me. I choose not to take the time to focus on that. If there's a benefit that I can get from believing that everything is nothing, then that benefit wouldn't exist anyways, because that benefit would also be nothing.
2. If current trends continue, Islam will overtake Christianity as the largest religion in the world roughly a few decades from now. Assuming this actually happens, and assuming the Islamic God doesn't actually exist, do you think this overtaking of Christianity by Islam is better explained under Christian theism or under naturalism?
Okay, here's the fundamental problem with that question for me, is that I believe in nature, but I don't believe in a world that could possibly exist without something outside of the laws of that world. Islam ascending and making their God, the main God, or I would definitely say it's better explained under Christian theism. There were so many things that, let me read this junk again, because I don't even know what this dude's saying, man. If that happens, that doesn't prove that God doesn't exist. So yes, that would still work better with Christian theism, because there has to be a God in order for those people to exist in the first place, for those people to have those mindsets. It's kind of like saying, if evil things happen, then how could there be a God? And evil would be proof that God exists, because there's no standard of good and there's no standard of evil if there's no God.
3. What, in your opinion, is the most compelling argument for atheism? Why do you think it is the best one, and why do you believe it fails?
That is a very good question. I don't know. Let me think about this. The best explanation for an atheist. The best thing that an atheist could possibly have is to go towards the nothing route. Reason why? We can't give an atheist a solid answer when they say nothing exists. There's no way we can give you a solid answer to prove to you that nothing exists, and that we aren't all, because we are subjective beings and we experience things ourselves. I can't experience something for you. If I could do that, then I could prove possibly that your experience is the same as mine. But you could be saying that and I could be interpreting it a different way. So the best explanation you would have is to say that this is all nothing. The problem is that it doesn't benefit us. So there's no real reason to believe in it, even if it is true. So that's why that fails.
4. Do you interpret verses such as Romans chapter 1 verse 20 to mean that God's existence is obvious to all and that all professed atheists are either lying or willfully suppressing the evidence? If so, how do you deal with the possibility that, if you're wrong and there are atheists who are not willfully suppressing the truth, you have made their atheism self-justifying?
I would say no, I don't think the atheist is lying or holding it in, per se, because I felt the same way. I said, God, you've got to show yourself to me. And I got frustrated even saying that question because I was like, God, I'm asking you to prove yourself to me, and I don't even know if I'm speaking to anybody. It's annoying me. It really is. And I was very angry, very angry. I was punching the wall, throwing my mattress up in the air. I was upset because I said, I am calling out to a God that will not show himself to me. I was very frustrated because I so badly want the truth. And I hate that I could possibly be going to church and everybody is lying to me and everyone's brainwashed. I hate that. And I want the truth that bad. So people that say they're atheists, I believe they're sincere. But the problem I have is I don't think that they are completely open-minded. Because if they were, they would do whatever it takes to figure out if there's a God. But I feel that they are just kind of pushing against it. Not everybody, but I feel that something either happened, which is probably a small amount. Something happened to where they say, you know what, I'm done with this. If I want the truth, I'm not just going to go off of what a book says. I am going to find it out for myself. I'm going to go in the woods, in the darkness, if I have to, and say, God, speak to me. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm not going to go so crazy and to kill myself to see God, right? But that in verse 28, it does say that he will turn you over to a reprobate mind. If you don't want the truth, then he will convince you even further. He will help you in the way that you want to go. So if you want to walk away from God, then he will allow you to do that. He will make it easy for you. If I want to walk out on a relationship, God's not the person to close the door and say, no, I love you and I want you to stay, because that's not real love. So he opens the door and lets you leave. But that verse just tells me that the evidence of God is clearly seen. I am here. The air we're breathing, it's clearly seen. It's like this. If there's a building, then it's clearly seen that there's a builder. That's what I take that verse to mean. Not that everyone recognizes it. A kid may think in his mind that the buildings grow up out of the ground. So it may not be clearly known and understood, but it's clearly seen. So if you're not able to notice it, then you should take some time to figure out the reality of the situation.
5. A dystheist is one who believes that God exists, but is not all good and is in fact possibly evil. Do you believe that a literal hell exists and is permitted to continue existing? If so, why are you not a dystheist? Or, because I don't want to assume anything, are you a dystheist?
I'm not gonna lie, I've never heard the term dystheist. I guess that's where we dissing God because he's evil. I don't know. I don't believe that God is evil. I believe that hell exists, and I do believe that it is eternal. Me personally, I do not like the idea of hell, and I don't understand it. I will say that I am somewhat selfish in this regard to make sure that I save myself. Just being honest and transparent, because you're not going to get that from a lot of Christians. Everyone has that, man, if I were God, I would do it differently. And we could probably do that till the day we die. Assuming that since God made us, that he is just and he is all good. Again, there's no real answer I can give to say why it's wrong or evil either. And that is where I have to rely on my logic and set my emotional views to the side, because I want the truth, even if I don't like it.
6. Do you believe that the Bible is inerrant, that it is free of error and contradiction? If so, how do you cope with the fact that there are lists of literally thousands of apparent errors and contradictions in the Bible, and only one of those apparent errors or contradictions needs to be an actual error or contradiction in order for the Bible to not be inerrant? If you do not believe the Bible is inerrant, what makes you think that the verses which promise salvation are not errors?
I don't believe there are any contradictions in the Bible. My belief on God is not because of the Bible. I don't know every single thing in the Bible to be 100% true. If God wants to show me that the entire King James Bible is free of errors, free of problems, because you could run into the problem of there being no contradictions and something just not being true. And there could be no way for us to know that. Which is why if I put my belief in a book, then I would not believe in God. That's why I don't make circular arguments based on the Bible. I believe in God because He has shown Himself to me because I asked Him to. I begged Him to. But if the Bible has contradictions, that still will not keep me from believing in God. But I don't believe it has any contradictions. It could have errors. They say that Mark chapter 16, verse 6 through 9 are not, or possibly not supposed to be there because they didn't know what the end of that book was. And we don't know if that's actually supposed to be in there. There's no contradictions. And from the way I see it, every contradiction that I've seen has always been able to be proven. You'd have to show me the specific contradiction and then we could go from there.
7. In many, if not most monarchies, the monarch will every so often appear before the people in the flesh for ceremonial occasions, such as opening a session of government, sending a Christmas greeting, and so on. They appear before their subjects in the same way that any person you know appears before you. And while people may oppose the monarchy, no one of sound mind is in any doubt that the monarch actually exists. Does it bother you that in your entire lifetime God has never done this? Why or why not?
I would say that God has appeared before us individually. This is the part that I think most atheists don't want to do. Or they've done it before to a certain amount. They didn't get what they wanted, so they got out. If you were to just do this and say, God, you know, I get frustrated, bro. But it's like, yo, God, show me that you are real. Please show me. I need to know. Come on. Show, you know, what do I have to do? You know, giving some time to see how God operates. And eventually something will click. Just the fact that you open your mind to all of it, not just limiting to the scientific explanations, but something that is outside of science. You just say, okay, I will give that a chance. And say, God, show yourself to me. I want to know. That is the reason that Christians and atheists will not see eye to eye. Not because of the arguments, because the atheists will not consider, yes, this is real. And to feel that unction and to say, God, I'm open-minded to it. So God has appeared before man, but He's not going to appear before someone who doesn't want to see Him.
8. Methodological naturalism is the working assumption that God does not exist, which is necessary to do science. Because if we assume that God exists and has the power to affect results, then we cannot trust any results. Methodological naturalism does not entail metaphysical naturalism, which is the actual position that only the natural world exists and God does not exist. One can assume that God does not exist to do the work of science without actually believing that God does not exist, and in fact, many scientists do. Most Christians seem to be comfortable with the fact that science uses methodological naturalism, and it doesn't bother them. Does it bother you, however, that science using methodological naturalism has been so incredibly successful? Does Christianity predict that such great strides can be made by assuming, even for working purposes, that the most important truth in the universe is false?
Well, I'm comfortable with it because science in a lot of ways has proven the Bible to be true, being that in the Bible it says so many things about the universe and the way that we live our lives. Even if you look at the story on George Washington, where he cut himself to see what would happen if he let the blood leave his body. And the Bible actually says that the life is in the blood. So we see certain things in the Bible that science eventually discovered. But the fact that they use this idea doesn't mean that that idea is true. I could assume something and still find out certain answers. I could assume that my wife, for instance, is cheating on me. It's not going to be a great parallel, but I could assume that my wife is cheating on me. And I could go look and say, oh man, you see, and I could find out certain facts, and she still could have not cheated on me, even though I found those facts. I found, oh, you bought this guy a coffee. You know, I could find out those facts from doing my research. Just because I thought she cheated on me doesn't mean because I find facts that she actually did. Just because they discover things to be true doesn't mean that the methodological naturalism is the correct view of reality.
9. Suppose God appeared to you, and in such a way that left absolutely no doubt in your mind that it was God, and ordered you to commit a moral atrocity such as genocide. Would you do it?
I like this question. For one, this is a contradiction in terms because there's no way for it to be a moral problem because of our view of morals coming from God. So if God told me to do it, it wouldn't be a moral, what did you say that word was? It would not be a moral atrocity. And it definitely wouldn't be a moral atrocity to anyone who doesn't believe in God because they wouldn't have a way to tell me how. Of course, it does sound evil. It sounds terrible for a loving God to tell me to do something like that, or to kill a kid or something. A grown man sacrificing a kid on a mountain, and then there was a lamb. You know, obviously his plan was not for that to happen. He told him to do that to test him. Now, if he actually would have went through with it, then we would have had some, okay, we got some questions about this. I would definitely do it. It's just like when he told David to take out certain groups, you know, he told certain people to go to war, to go and obtain the land. I wouldn't be happy about it. I would definitely question, like they did in the Bible when God told them certain things. I would say, God, really? Am I misinterpreting something? Like, is that, I would make sure, God, you got to show, like, it would be just like that moment where I had to find out if God was real or not. Like, you got to show me that this is what you're saying for sure. And then if you told me to do it, and I'm not going to lie, I could possibly have a Jonah moment and get stuck in the well, because he told him to go to Nineveh and he didn't want to do it.
Oh! Somebody! Oh! He needs some milk!
I can't say for sure if I would do it or not. I might disobey God because of how I would feel.
10. Think of the conceptual problems faced by the average Christian. To believe that a being who committed genocide, killing all but 8 members of an entire species of sentient beings, is worthy not just of respect but of worship. To believe that one man offering himself as a blood sacrifice atones for the misdeeds of an entire race, and that this is morally acceptable. To believe that the source of all truth and all wisdom allows the vast majority of the human race to live in falsehood. To believe that such a vast, such an unfathomably large universe exists just for us in these few thousand square miles of a planet's surface. Christians have considered these problems, and they have arrived at answers that are, if not always intellectually fulfilling, then at least intellectually acceptable to them. Why could atheists, naturalist atheists who believe that only the natural world exists, not do the same thing with any perceived problems with naturalism that you might think of? Could they not arrive at answers that are intellectually acceptable to them? Whatever problem you might think of with atheism, whatever you think the deal breaker is, could atheists not think of a way around it? And if you admit that this is possible, and instead want to focus on the issue of what explains the data better, why should we not prefer the explanatory power of a worldview that does not posit a being who is worthy of worship but commits genocide, who is moral and just but accepts blood sacrifice, and so on? At the very least, isn't naturalism simpler?
It's like saying, my mom is real, right? And could someone give another explanation for how you got here other than your mother? And it's like, I mean, I guess possibly you'd have to really show me that I've been completely brainwashed over every experience I've had with my mom and every experience I've had with my dad telling me who my mom was, you know, like them being together, like all of that. My sisters, and you'd have to Spider-Man Doctor Strange me.
Nice knowing you, Spider-Man.
Wait, excuse me?
The entire world's about to forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Everyone?
I would say it is impossible. It is impossible to find another explanation besides God. God is not a technical name. God has traits. Personal, omniscient. He is the creator. He has to be personal. It has to be something personal. It has to be something that exists outside of logic that got us here. The problem, let's say, methodological naturalism. The problem with it is it starts off with a big contradiction because of the belief system that something has to exist in order for something else to exist, that nothing cannot form something, and the nothing can truly be eternal. If you believe in anything that can be eternal, that thing is God. If you believe the universe to be eternal, then that universe is God because of the traits. But the universe is not personal. It can't be known. So why would it create us? You know, there's no reason for it to create us. There has to be some type of mind. There has to be. To think of this, to put this together, we cannot be. If that's the case, then I don't trust anyone. I would not even, there's no reason to keep researching. I'll tell you the big contradiction. Nothing. And then something had to be there first. So no, there is no possible explanation, because if you give another explanation of some dimension or something, I'll tell you, even if you were to reach in the future and say that something happened to where, you know, something got pulled into this black hole and there was a space of nothing that, you know, something came from that and formed into this universe we have. I've done some thought on this. It's like, there's no way possible. I mean, if someone could come up with this explanation, that would be crazy. It's impossible. The only explanation we have, period, that makes any sense is that something outside, we have to consider something outside of nature, created nature. That is the closest thing to a logical explanation that we can possibly get. There is no other answer. Well, thank you. I hope I answered the questions okay, decent. I tried to be as transparent as possible, but as always, God bless y'all.